If Antarctica were a pizza, it would be the strangest one ever sliced. 7 awkward wedges, each claimed by a different country, all pointing toward the South Pole like someone got bored playing Trivial Pursuit. But wait, what about that big empty slice over on the side? That's Marie Byrd Land, and it's the only land on Earth that no country wants to own. Strange, right? Now zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Countries are building more bases, flying in citizens, and staking weird territorial claims on the iciest, driest, most lifeless place on the planet. Why? Because everything, and we mean everything, changes in the year 2048. Let's break down what's going on in a continent that doesn't have a single city, has no permanent population, but somehow has flags, birth certificates, tourist cruise liners, and potentially enough oil and water to start a future world war. Antarctica doesn't show up correctly on most maps. Seriously, on many world maps, especially the Mercator projection you probably grew up with in school, it's just this massive bloated white band across the bottom. It looks like it could eat up all of South America and half of Australia. But that's just map distortion. Antarctica is big, sure, but not Godzilla-sized. Flip the map so that you're looking directly down at the South Pole and everything changes. You can see the full circular shape of the continent and, more importantly, how the territorial claims actually look, like slices of pie extending from the pole out toward the coast. But here's the wild part. These aren't just artistic interpretations or decorative boundaries. These are real national claims. Or at least they were real. Because while countries rushed to plant flags and name bits of ice after monarchs, something even stranger happened. They all agreed to stop. Back in the day, around the late 1800s and early 1900s, Antarctica was like a blank spot on the map, a mystery waiting to be conquered. And it didn't take long for explorers from the UK, France, Norway, and a handful of other adventurous nations to suit up and head south. The race to the South Pole was on, and it wasn't just about glory. Countries saw land, and land meant resources, even if that land was buried under miles of ice and freezing cold misery. Think uranium, coal, maybe even oil. The frozen wasteland suddenly looked like a glittering vault of untouched wealth. Norway's Roald Amundsen was the first to hit the South Pole, beating out Britain's Robert Falcon Scott. Amundsen and his crew did it the old-fashioned way, by eating their dogs and marching through hell. Scott followed a month later, only to perish on the journey back. In Britain, Scott is often portrayed as the tragic hero, the noble failure. But Amundsen, he just won and went home. After that, things got territorial fast. Countries started drawing borders, or at least imaginary ones. Britain staked out a huge wedge, pointing straight up from the South Pole toward their old empire territories. France, Australia, and New Zealand followed suit. Even Nazi Germany got involved for a moment, dropping metal swastika markers over Queen Maud Land in 1939, like they were playing darts from a Zeppelin. It didn't stick. Chile and Argentina came up with the most bizarre retroactive claim of all. Their logic? Well, when Spain and Portugal divided up South America in the 1400s with a neat vertical line, they never really said where the line ended. So if you just extend that same colonial line all the way south, tada, Antarctica belongs to them. Seriously, that was the argument. Eventually, 7 countries had claims that looked like slices of pizza, all radiating from the South Pole. And not just any pizza, overlapping pizza. Chile and Argentina's claims smushed into Britain's. Nobody agreed on borders, but nobody fought about it either. They all just sort of looked the other way, like housemates arguing over fridge shelves. Then the Cold War happened. Suddenly, the idea of any one country controlling a vast, remote, uninhabited continent wasn't just annoying, it was dangerous. Nuclear testing, military buildup, Cold War paranoia. That's what people started worrying about. So in 1959, a dozen countries sat down and did something shocking. They signed the Antarctic Treaty, a legally binding agreement that declared Antarctica a continent dedicated to peace and science. No military use, no nuclear tests, no permanent colonies, and crucially, no new territorial claims. Existing claims were frozen, not erased, but also not recognized internationally. The map was literally and politically frozen in place. This was a geopolitical miracle. Countries agreed not to use Antarctica for war or profit, but instead for shared research. Scientists from all over the world could set up research stations, collaborate on environmental studies, and even share data. The treaty worked so well, it's been expanded and upheld by over 50 nations. But here's where things start to heat up. In 1991, a new agreement was added, the Madrid Protocol. It reinforced environmental protection and, most importantly, banned all mining activity. No digging, no drilling, no extracting resources of any kind. But there's a catch. The protocol isn't permanent. It can be reviewed starting in the year 2048. That's when the real games might begin. Because under all that ice, there's treasure, oil, natural gas, rare earth minerals, and fresh water, a lot of it. Over 70% of the world's fresh water is locked in Antarctic ice. That's a staggering figure, especially in a world where water scarcity is becoming a real geopolitical crisis. And countries are already preparing for 2048, whether they admit it or not. Let's talk about the so-called research stations. These outposts look a lot less like scientific bases and a lot more like pre-built settlements. Permanent structures, airstrips, housing, even schools in some cases. Chile literally flies pregnant women to give birth on Antarctic bases so their babies will technically be born on the continent, creating citizens with Antarctic birthrights. That's not science, that's strategy. China, for example, is rapidly expanding its presence. They've built new bases, paved runways, and even talked about mapping mineral-rich zones, all under the banner of research. The US, Australia, Russia, they're all reinforcing their existing bases. But these aren't just weather stations anymore. They're footholds. Meanwhile, Marie Byrd Land, the unclaimed slice, sits untouched. No one officially owns it because no one was allowed to claim it after the treaty locked the map in place. But if the treaty collapses or changes after 2048, that massive slice could become the last great land grab in human history. Antarctica may have been frozen in time by treaties and flags, but nothing in geopolitics stays frozen forever. Even ice melts. And in Antarctica's case, it's melting faster than expected. And as the ice disappears, new opportunities and threats begin to surface. One of the biggest of those, tourism. Tourists have started arriving in Antarctica in numbers that would have sounded like a joke a few decades ago. Not just scientists with a taste for frostbite, but actual vacationers, 44,000 of them each year. Most come on massive cruise ships that look like they belong in the Caribbean, not slicing through Antarctic waters. These ships dump their wealthy guests onto remote, icy beaches so they can take selfies with penguins and stare dramatically into the white nothingness. Sounds glamorous until you realize every one of those ships is burning through thousands of gallons of fuel just to make a selfie happen. Then there's the poop problem. Yeah, it's real. Antarctica has a strict rule that visitors must leave the continent exactly as they found it. That includes bodily waste, every piece of trash, every wrapper, and yes, every ounce of human waste has to be packed up and shipped back out. You break it, you bought it. You poop it, you carry it. The reality is less postcard-worthy and more biohazard logistics. As more people come to see the pristine, they slowly make it less pristine. Foot traffic disrupts fragile ecosystems. Introduced microbes, even from someone's boot, could throw off delicate environmental balances that have remained untouched for thousands of years. And it's not just tourists. The expansion of research stations means more construction, more energy use, and yes, more emissions. So the very people protecting Antarctica are also part of its slow transformation. But climate change, that's the real juggernaut here. In the last decade alone, melting ice from Antarctica has caused over 0.15 inches of sea level rise globally. That might not sound like much, but when you multiply that across every ocean, it's enough to submerge entire coastal villages. And that's just the beginning. Entire ice shelves have collapsed. Glaciers are thinning. And some scientists believe we're nearing the point of no return. This isn't just bad news for penguins and seal pups. Melting Antarctic ice doesn't just raise sea levels, it changes global currents. Ocean circulation patterns that regulate weather around the planet are being disrupted. That could mean harsher winters in some places, longer droughts in others, and increasingly unpredictable weather everywhere. The frozen continent is more connected to everyday life than most people realize. And that's why the year 2048 feels less like a future date and more like a countdown clock. When the Madrid Protocol becomes eligible for review, countries will face a choice: renew the environmental protections or start carving up the ice for profit. The second option is looking more tempting every year. As global demand for rare earth elements, fossil fuels, and fresh water increases, the frozen vault beneath Antarctica will become harder to ignore. And technically, the treaty doesn't stop anyone from preparing. Countries can't dig now, but they can map, survey, and study. China has been especially aggressive, launching expeditions that just happen to include geological analysis of mineral-rich regions. Australia's bases are near valuable offshore oil zones. The US has invested heavily in infrastructure at the South Pole, not just science labs, but full logistical hubs capable of supporting long-term activity. If the treaty ever collapses or is simply rewritten, everything changes. Marie Byrd land could become a free-for-all. Nations could rush to stake claims on a first-come, first-served basis, or even worse, refuse to recognize each other's claims entirely. That's how wars start, not necessarily full-scale invasions, but economic and political warfare. Sanctions, blockades, disputed shipping lanes, strategic alliances shifting, all over a place where nobody lives. There's also the wild card of private corporations. Right now, the treaty only governs nations. But what about a tech billionaire who decides to build a luxury resort on the ice? Or a mining company that finds a legal loophole through partnerships with treaty members? Make sure to subscribe for more unexpected map madness. And hey, if you learned something new, drop a comment below and share this with your most geography-obsessed friend. Until next time, stay curious, stay frosty.